Hey, welcome to the 412 podcast. My name is Shea.
My name's Tyler, and our heart behind this podcast is to equip youth pastors, youth leaders, families, and students to do the work that God has called us to build up the church, and to create maximum kingdom impact. Hey, I don't know. We're in the middle of a quarantine right now, or maybe not quarantine. That's probably not the right word. I think the word is shelter in place, stay at home here in Minnesota.
Stay at home is what Minnesota calls it.
Stay at home, right? And we're in like this going on right now because of the coronavirus, everything like that. And the way we do ministry and everything has kind of changed. It's Thursday. It's the day after our midweek. Like, what have you been doing in during this COVID-19 stuff?
Yeah, so just last night, we actually did Zoom for the first time.
Okay.
The first couple of weeks before, we did pre-recorded videos, which I could talk a little bit about later, how I think it was and it was not effective.
Sure.
But last night was really awesome on Zoom because I was able to connect and see just all the different students. And as much as I really wanted to teach and have some time in worship, I think the students were just really just itching to just see each other and be with each other. I mean, there was a student we had last year who joined in on the call with us, and so everybody was like, "What? Her name, Jackie, she's on the call right now." And so everybody wanted to talk to Jackie. Everyone wanted to see my baby. And so I think I ended up giving like a 5-minute devotional kind of thing, which was, I mean, don't take that as me condescending it. It was definitely just what my group needed at the time. And so Zoom was and was not really effective, but we could talk about why I didn't think it was effective later. But Tyler, I know you had midweek last night and you were on Zoom as well, right?
Yeah, so we're doing the Zoom live right now, and when we were talking about it, so I lead a staff, small staff of, there's 3 of us on staff, and when we were talking about it, we have the capability in our church to do live recording and to do different things. We have a studio and things like that. But as I was kind of praying about it and thinking about just what we should do, in this time of social distancing, I hate the word social distancing. Even though that's like the buzzword right now, I think it's physical distancing, but even more now than ever, we need social connection.
Exactly.
Right. And so like the big thing when I learned about Zoom, and I have used Zoom in different things, and I'm in part of a national network that we use Zoom all the time because we're all around the country. And so I was pretty familiar with Zoom. But like I liked the factor of Zoom because what it was is it created an opportunity for us to connect. And in my ministry context, a lot of my students don't have social media, or if they do have social media, it's not like Facebook or Instagram. I'm not on Snapchat. That's a whole different episode as to why or whatever. But as we're just kind of thinking like, okay, how can we get connected with people? If we just put a video out on YouTube, would we be able to have a ton of interaction with students? And so the answer when we were kind of praying about that and thinking about that was no. We wanted to be able to connect with students, to talk to them, to say, when they pop up on Zoom, be like, oh, hey, so-and-so's here. We're so glad you're here. And we've actually, last night, we were on, I think I was on till about 9:15, and our group ends at 8. And we were on till about 9:15, just connecting with students and talking with students because, they were showing off what they're drawing, talking about the kind of things that they're doing. I was setting up, I had a student teaching me how to play Fortnite because I don't do Fortnite. I tried to download it, but apparently my computer doesn't have enough room. But it was kind of a cool time. And that's kind of our heart behind it, just like the practicality behind it of like, I want to connect with students and not just connect with students on them watching me talk on a screen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that has anything to do with kind of your shift, because you started out the first couple of weeks of kind of the social distancing, doing stuff pre-recorded. You want to talk to that?
Yeah, so I can actually jump a little bit into it. So what was really cool about the pre-recording was that it seemed to be effective, and it really seemed to work well, that some of the students were able to connect with it, and they were actually being able to listen to it, because one of the things about Zoom that was a negative drawback was that some of the students felt like they just could not really like listen or hone in on one person right now.
Sure.
And I know Zoom has that breakout rooms feature, which I'd love to use, but my capability doesn't let me do that because I don't really have leaders to send these students to
Sure,
have
because
these
you're in
breakout.
a smaller context, just for the listeners and everything.
Right.
You're running about 10 students every week, right?
Right. So we actually had 11 students plus
Nice.
one parent was on there, as well as my pastor jumped in because he wanted to see what the Zoom call looked like
No
because he
pressure.
was excited how I could. He was excited to see how Sidekick was being used, and we could
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit later. But he
Love
was like,
Sidekick.
"Whoa, like Zoom is such a powerful tool," and it is. But I found that a lot of my students said, this is really cool. It'd be a great way for us to connect and talk with each other. But we would love to be able just to listen to teacher where we can focus on it. And so what I think I'm actually starting to shift to is, and I saw another ministry was doing this, that they pre-record a message and they put it up on like Monday or Tuesday, and then they all get together on a Zoom call where they essentially just hang out.
Nice.
And that's really what my ministry right now is itching for. Is a lot of my students, I know me being an extrovert, we're just all looking to just be with one another and
Sure.
hang out with one another. That I don't know if really teaching is as effective right now. I know Paul says in the New Testament, follow me like I follow Christ. So there's a lot of Paul saying, just do as I'm doing, kind of thing like that. And so I think there's a lot of, as opposed to me just teaching, there's a lot of, okay, Shea's taught us and told us about things like this can happen. Is he going to lead by example? And I think
Sure.
that's the time that I'm specifically in right now. So Zoom was and was not effective
Yeah.
for me last night. That I think I'm going to try and balance the best of both worlds, where we'll do 2 weeks of pre-recorded and then we'll come together and do a Zoom call as a way just to help break everything down and bring everyone together, kind of thing like that.
Yeah. No,
And
that's
so,
sweet.
so I think that's the direction that we're starting to go. So I don't want to like knock Zoom like it's a terrible thing, because Zoom is an extremely powerful tool. We were able to play games with it last night, and I thought it worked extremely well for that. But when it came to the worship and teaching side of it, it seemed to flop. And maybe that's just not me understanding how to use it properly. Or maybe it's just the context I'm in, because one of the
Mm.
things we have to realize is even if we were to read the article on how to have the most effective Zoom for your ministry,
Yeah.
your context will always find a way to step in there and say, that part of it's not going to work. And I think for me, it's the teaching and worship, it's worship side of it just won't work out well for it. But Tyler,
Yeah.
what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I've enjoyed our use of Zoom. We cut worship, so we're not doing any sort of worship with Zoom. So we've added a few more games in, and then teaching. You have a spotlight feature on Zoom, so I can actually click in spotlight, so it does bring it onto me. I just set up this backdrop, like this fancy backdrop behind me, to like cut out like the our guest room, or it's really just our storage room in the basement of my house. And so like there's all kinds of stuff or whatever. But to create that spotlight feature is kind of nice. We actually are running into an issue. We pay for to where you can have 100 people, and we're like butting up to that 100 people that have been
Oh,
coming on, which
wow.
has been super cool.
Yeah,
And it's mass chaos. And so we've actually talked about splitting it down into something smaller. And one of the things, I actually have a Zoom call later with one of my leaders. And if you're a leader watching this, like you have the best vantage point that you can help your youth leader, or you can help your whoever's leading your time, to give them feedback and stuff like that. Because one of the things I told my leaders early on, I said, one, I need your feedback, because this is all new to me. It's all new to you. We need to talk about this. And the one thing I can promise you is that we're probably going to change things. Like
yeah,
that's the one constant, is things are going to change. And so adapting and adjusting and coming up with all these different creative ways to do it is really good. But I think the heart behind it, and I think you said it too already, is the heart behind Zoom is that connection. And so
right.
also, if you're a youth leader or a youth volunteer, or wherever you're at working in ministry, Zoom is a great tool to connect with your kids, to connect with your students, to
Mhm.
connect with your small group. The breakout feature on Zoom is fantastic. We do some games, I teach, and then I say, okay, we're heading to small groups, and we click a button, and they all get pinged on their computer, and they click, and they go off, and they join their small group. It's super slick. Just the ability for kids to be able to connect with their small group leaders. And so that's been super practical. But here's the thing, that just thinking about it as we're dealing with Zoom and everything like that, the question that was posed to me was, do you think Zoom is something that is going to continue on in ministry? And I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, Shay. Just maybe this is moving into that theoretical side of things. But like, do you see Zoom being something that we continue to use in ministry? Because it's an unbelievable tool.
Right. No, it's and it's an extremely powerful tool, especially in like the screen sharing realm. If you have a strong enough and fast enough computer, I mean, like you could honestly really run a church service
Yeah.
with your members. Now, if you're a smaller church, it might be, mass chaos. If you were, Life Church, Greg Crochelle with 10,000 people, 10 million people or whatever he has.
I've actually seen a church in our community, it's a local mega church in our community, that they're doing
Okay.
these things called micro churches, that they're actually
Oh,
using Zoom to meet and then screen share the service, the online service. And
oh,
so
that's
it's almost like a home church, but through online. They're calling them micro churches. It's kind of cool.
okay.
I just saw it yesterday actually, because one of my friends I grew
Yeah.
up with, she posted something about her church where she goes, and I was like, oh, that's super intriguing.
Right. Yeah. So I think, with Zoom being the powerful tool it is, I also see that at the end of this quarantine, I think a lot of people are starting to realize how powerful Zoom is. I think we
Hmm.
can expect to see the prices of Zoom maybe go up in the
Yeah.
future because of this, because there's going to be such a demand for it in the future. Um, but I think there is a lot of potential
Hmm.
there for Zoom, especially for us being in Minnesota. We have
Yeah.
snow days, and now I don't know how that works in the South. Maybe they have tornado days. I don't know what that looks like being in the South. But I think with the aspect of snow days, and there's just times that we have to cancel ministry instead of saying, hey, we're just going to cancel ministry and just go home, because I know whenever I have to do that, I'm always bummed, because
Hmm.
being an extrovert, I love being able to even just hang out with the students and just hear what's going on in their life. That having something like Zoom can be a really powerful tool, but I think it becomes even more powerful when if you know how to screen share, pairing it up with things. But if you're going to use Zoom and you can almost prepare ahead to know you're going to use Zoom, if you can pair it with other things throughout the week, I think there is a lot of promise there in the future for the church.
Hmm.
I don't know what that looks like, but I think there is definitely a lot of promise to go forward with it. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tyler?
Yeah, I think like in our context in Minnesota, we have snow days, we have cold days. I think last year we missed it was like 4 Wednesdays, it felt like, where we had to cancel. Our policy at our
Right.
church is that if the school district cancels because of cold weather, then we cancel as well. It's just kind of a clean,
Yeah, it's super easy
expectation.
to follow along with the school
Hmm.
district.
Yeah,
So
and
there's a little mini shareable bite.
yes,
Maybe, if you're a youth pastor, this is probably more for the youth pastor listening to it.
right.
But maybe, what is the school district doing? And what I'll also add into that and say, what I like to do is I like to look at the school calendar. And if there's no school happening on a Wednesday or something like that, I usually try to look and plan creatively around that instead of just
Hmm.
doing another normal Wednesday night. But yeah.
Right. No, for sure. Yeah, but I think with the unexpected cancellation days, right? Is we now know, if you've been doing Zoom, we now know that we can do, whether it's you just set it up to where it's just a small group hangout, like empowering your leaders to just like hang out in a small group setting or whatever, just so that they have that social interaction,
Right.
or run it like we've been doing it. I think it's kind of cool to think about it, because it always feels like, I don't know what it's been, but like in Minnesota, it always ends up being either on the weekend that we have a bunch of snow days or on a Wednesday. It's like it's Murphy's Law.
Right,
Like it
right. It
probably will
doesn't
just
seem to
happen.
work out one way or the other well.
Yeah, it's been weird the last couple of years in our context, but I think there's ways to use it. I also have been heard some youth pastors, especially right now, but it could even be moving forward, youth pastors, youth leaders, a way to connect without having to leave your house. And so I actually set up a Zoom, meeting in my Zoom account that's called Tyler's Office. And like, so if people want to like pop into my office, I can like send
Right.
them the link. They can click in and we can talk. And it doesn't involve us actually like them having to drive to church, or it saves a lot of time. And so that's another intriguing way that I think Zoom. I think we'll keep our Zoom account that we pay for beyond the lockdown.
Yeah, I know I paid for the whole year subscription up front with
Yeah.
it. And then what I also find really cool about Zoom and the fact that you can, record your meetings in Zoom. Like I know whenever I jump in a Zoom call, it automatically starts recording
Yeah.
my every call I have instantly. That it allows you to have one-on-ones. Now, obviously, be safe with the one-on-one,
Totally.
but it allows you to have one-on-one still with students that maybe you couldn't have in person, while also allowing yourself to be able to backlog everything. So, in the case if something were to happen, that you would be able to have some security and protection for yourself. So I think, even in the way of whether it's, counseling or whether, a student just wanting to hang out, I think definitely there's a lot of potential for Zoom.
Hmm.
Like I said, my biggest hard part of it is the teaching and worship side of it. But hearing that maybe it's just you pre-record your thing and then you just screen share and everyone just
Yeah.
watches it together. I mean, that could be a really super effective way to easily do it as well. So
Totally.
yeah, I think there is a future here for Zoom. I mean, like I said, I've already invested in at least this year to where I'm hoping I can find ways to be creative and use Zoom again. In
Yeah.
the
Yeah, so cool. No, I love that. So wrapping up, right? Because we don't want to go too long necessarily,
Right.
because you guys got stuff to do and everything like that. But wrapping up, is there something that's like shareable that you would suggest for like a youth pastor, or maybe it's a youth leader watching, something that they can do right now in this season of quarantine, or how do we say quarantine? Stay at home,
Yeah, yeah.
or the chance of social distancing. Like, what is something that you've done that you've seen that's really effective um, in this time? I know you've done something cool actually, so I'm setting you up because I
Yeah,
know we've
yeah.
talked about it.
Yeah, team me up so I can get a nice little drive going there.
Right?
One of the cool things that I really did, and what's interesting is my context. So I talked earlier about how context can kind of ruin things. This is an aspect of my context coming into play and really teeing me up right here. So I have about around 10 students. If every student were to show up, I'd have about 20 at most. But what's really cool is I was able to drive around and deliver fast food to all my students. So instead of giving them a bunch of options, I said, nope, we're just going to go to Wendy's. And I got them a 4 for 4. And honestly, I think it was like 13 or 14 students ended up replying and asking, saying like, yeah, let me do this. And it was like $60 for it.
Nice.
Kind of thing. So I know like a lot of people have like budgets on freeze right now that my pastor was saying, hey, it's $60. You can spend that.
Right.
It's not like you're dropping 500 on something. It's 60.
That's what it'd be for me in my context. It'd be like
Right.
$500, and then
Right.
my finance guy would kill me.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think that's really cool. So if you're a smaller ministry, maybe that's something you could do, because I know for at least at stay-at-home order, faith leaders are exempt. So I'm
Hmm.
allowed to be out and about, doing my work. If I want to, drive over to someone's house, I can do that. I have a little paper that says, I'm exempt. I'm allowed to do this. Not that I think I'll ever have to show anyone it, but I
You're
feel a little
essential.
powerful that I have it. I feel like, Nazi Germany, show me your papers kind of thing like that. Like that's almost what it appears to me
You,
like.
you get pulled over and you just slap it on the window. Be like,
Right,
I'm
exactly.
essential.
But it was really cool because one of the ways that this worked out was I thought this was going to team me up for conversations with my students. I don't know where all the golf references just came from. Maybe I'm just itching to get out and play.
Me too.
But I thought it was going to provide a lot of cool opportunities for me to just talk and say like, hey, the reason I did this was because of Jesus, and go into a cool little conversation piece. But one of the students that responded actually hadn't been to our youth group in like 6 or 7 months. He's like, dude, you're really going to go get this for me? Like, I haven't seen you in forever.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, man, of course, you're still part of this youth group. And he's like, okay. And so he sent me his order and I went there and dropped the food off. I was able to see his mom. And so this student, just to give you a little background, he's a troubled student. I'm sure we all have that troubled student in our youth group. And
And if you
what I
don't,
thought
you're the
was
troubled one. So
yes.
yeah.
What I thought was going to be a conversation that was for me, this student actually went downstairs and had a conversation with his mom, which and she texted me and told me this has not happened in like 3 or 4 months. She hasn't been
Yeah,
able to
dude.
have a conversation with him. He comes down, he goes, why did Shea do that? That was really odd and weird. And she was able to go into this really cool gospel presentation.
Love it.
And I don't know if he got saved or anything, but I mean, it was just a really cool way that without even thinking about it, I empowered the parent to be able to speak into the student's life, and the student was impacted by it. And it was a $4 Wendy's order that I brought to him, and I think he got the crispy chicken or something like that. So it was really cool that this worked out. So maybe that's something that you can do
I
with
love it.
your ministry. But Tyler, I know you have a larger ministry. What are you doing?
Yeah, so we, as our leadership team, our church leadership team as a whole, kind of divvied out like our whole database of people, and we've actually been working through calling everyone in our church, and so it's not just student related, but it's all church related. But we have been working through just talking through with our youth leaders and talking with our people and stuff like that. We actually have been calling people, and I actually had a lady respond back to me and was like, "Hey, thank you so much for calling this person. She's been homebound, because of sickness and stuff like that, and so she's been struggling with loneliness and stuff like that, and so it's been cool to like reach out. And so what a great way if you're a youth leader watching this podcast or listening to this podcast, or or if you're a youth volunteer, you could reach out to people, getting connected with those. Maybe if they haven't been on a Zoom call, calling them up or sending them a text, just connecting with people right now, because that's what people need, is this connection
Right.
time right now. So yeah,
Exactly. I love it. Love it.
cool.
That's awesome, man.
Well, we hope that this podcast has been a time for you to just feel equipped, because ultimately, again, we want to equip people to do the work that God has called them to build up the church and make maximum kingdom impact. And so thanks for checking out the 412 podcast, and we'll see you
Yeah.
next
Have a
time.
great day.